think this, again, this opens up the really big question that we want throughout this festival to debate, which is how you pursue, you know, ethical business. And there are, I think what you're saying is there are different routes and different ways, and one can work on the face of it, apparently within something that isn't owned by feminists or owned, you know, independently or whatever. But I think we'll I'm sure come back to that, but I can see lots of questions coming in. And I think just picking up, Lennie, your point about international reach, this is a question from Michelle, who says, what are your recommendations for women from less visible ethnic minorities, Pacific Islander, in acquiring literary representation? Just a second, I'm going to find the rest of the question. When there is little effort in inclusion in mainstream literature, what trends are you seeing in terms of DEI to change this internally in publishing houses and literary agencies? So I think that puts together some of the really burning questions about representation and inclusivity, but with also the question I think we can add to that about reach and not necessarily the most obvious exclusions. And maybe Sharmaine, do you have any comments?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what's really interesting is that I've just before this panel, I just got off the phone to an agent at one of the biggest literary agencies that just pitched me a book by a native indigenous American. And I just, you know, I think, you know, there's a lot of different barriers to entry within the publishing industry, but I also think that it's really important to understand writing and different forms of writing as well. And there's often, sometimes I do think it can be too easy to say that because someone's from a particular protected characteristic, that means that they're not able to do something. And as a Black woman, like, I've never ever thought that I couldn't do something because of my race. And I understand totally why other people believe that it's a hindrance. But I think when it comes to your art, you have to absolutely like push through and find, if not similar, but similar types of people and similar types of sensibility. I mean, no one's really sort of writing in a vacuum, even if you have very unique experiences from like the specific Pacific Islands, for example. There'll be someone somewhere who has written around what you're writing, and the role of the writer when finding an agent, the right agent, is to look for like-minded people and to look for the sensibility, the understanding, and the sort of the culture. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to look like you, or they have to be a person of color, or they even have to be a woman. What it means is that they have to be able to, you have to feel like they're going to understand your work for what it is outside of your own protected characteristics. And I kind of feel like as artists, which writers are, that's the best sort of gift that you can give yourself, because in the end, you don't just want people from where you're from you don't just want people to read your work from the same background as you. You want millions of people all over the world to hear your voice. And so it's really important to find the right people from the beginning, and they could be from anywhere, but it has to be about sensibility of language. And often if you look at the back of your favorite writers and you look in the acknowledgements, then you can see agents, and they always thank their agents, and then maybe those are the agents that you reach out to.
I want to follow this with a question around translation. I was very struck, again, Sharmaine, with your story about moving to Berlin and the kind of transnational perspectives and mix of